Hello, welcome to the Media Club. I'm your host, Matt Deegan. In the club today, Prince Harry settles with News Group newspapers. Is that finally the end of the phone hacking saga? And has the press learnt its lesson? Will Wood, head of PR for Multitude Media, reflects on a decade of trials. Also on the programme, could Mr Beast buy TikTok? Jake Hunter, investigations editor at Deadline, reflects on a week of turmoil at the Chinese social media firm. All that plus what happens when a TV production loses its star talent during filming. We look at the Big Trouble in Big Talk's latest show. That's all happening in this edition of the Media Club. Come on in. Gents, welcome to the show. Deadline's Jake Cantor. Who are you going to add to our Media Club roles this week?
I actually struggled a bit this week, but I've alighted on Vincent Berthier.
I do not know who that is. Tell me who that is.
So he works for Reporters Without Borders. They have, along with other major news organisations, including the BBC, led complaints against Apple and its AI technology, which has been re-engineering headlines and making egregious errors, including suggesting that Luigi Mangione, who was behind this killing of the United Healthcare boss in America, had shot himself, that Netanyahu had been arrested. I mean, this is just absolutely awful. And I cannot believe that Apple allowed these mistakes to happen. And it is absolutely the right thing that it has withdrawn this technology and is making changes to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I mean, it's sort of unusual, actually, that they have sort of reversed. That's not normally what you see from tech companies. No.
Apple particularly is often reticent to engage with these kinds of complaints and issues. So for them to have responded in this way, I think shows the seriousness of the matter.
I mean, Apple's has a very strong position in the news market. I think people underestimate how much traffic Apple News sends to publications.
Yeah, I mean, so these are not just like headlines that you might see absent-mindedly scrolling. These were notifications potentially to millions and millions of iPhones around the world. And, you know, at a really delicate time for trust in journalism, for Apple to be perpetuating disinformation, or I guess it's misinformation because it's not done intentionally, is just hugely damaging for everyone involved.
A fine person to add to our roles. Multimedia's Will Wood, hello.
Hello.
Who have you got to add to our lists this week?
So I actually wanted to give a shout out to Jack Rook and the Big Boys team, who had a screening for the final series this week of Big Boys. I think actually with the lovely shadow of the Gavin and Stacey special that aired over Christmas, I think there's been a really productive conversation going on about comedy and comedy on TV, and I think I think people don't necessarily understand or quite quickly forget the battles that go on to try and get a show even like Big Boys to air. Jack took that show to the Edinburgh Fringe years ago. He's talked very openly about that journey, and I think I'm sure there was a really interesting production journey for that show that Rough Cut had to help navigate as well. And we get to enjoy and see that journey of a show really find its feet, and it will come to an end with this series starting in February. Disclaimer, Rough Cut are a client.
Always hustling, Will.
Always hustling. But yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out. And Jack, I thought, spoke really eloquently at the Edinburgh TV Festival last year about the challenges of facing particularly people from low-income backgrounds. And he was one of the first, I thought, that also acknowledged the geographical difference as well. He talked about the fact that he grew up in London or just on kind of the outskirts, and the fact that he still had more privilege than people that live north of the M25. Shock horror. And it's something that I think we do have to delve into more. So he's my addition.
A good addition. I mean, comedy, it's so difficult, and you need to give it time, and there isn't often a lot of time in the commissioning world, is there? Yeah,
and again, to use the example of Gavin and Stacey, I mean, the numbers it draws now was dwarf what it was getting at the start, although it resonated very quickly. But comedy does take time, and it demands, I think, a little bit more of proactivity from an audience, but also, dramas you're not necessarily extracting the same sort of reactions in the sense that if you can judge comedies just by how many times you laugh, and there's lots of comedies that do that. You're judging the kind of laughs per minute almost, but actually it has evolved. But it does need time, and it needs support from a budget point of view. There is a growing move to try and call for kind of tax breaks in the way that other forms get. And I think that's really important because we do comedy better than anywhere else on earth. It does travel. And when it works, we all celebrate it. And it drags us away from some of the grim realities of life. So I think we need to really back comedy, and it does need the time to succeed.
Well, you mentioned Prince Harry. Well, he settled his long-standing case with News Group newspapers, that's The Sun and the News of the World, as was, along with Labour peer Lord Watson, seemingly bringing an end to the phone hacking cases on Fleet Street. Jake, is that it for phone hacking? Have the Murdochs finally seen...
That's not an accusation. That almost... Have you stopped?
Is this the series finale? I mean, I think it certainly felt that way this week. I mean, very, very high drama. Going into this, absolutely no one expected Harry to settle. He has talked about this as a moral crusade, a battle between good, which he paints himself as, and evil, which he characterises Rupert Murdoch as. I mean, he literally used the word evil to describe Rupert Murdoch. And for it to be settled in the way that it was, I mean, not even on the steps of the court, but within the courtroom, they had to mock an appeal because the judge wouldn't give them an adjournment. So they threatened to go to the Court of Appeal to secure time to thrash out the final elements of this settlement. And then yesterday you had this spectacle in which David Sherborne and Tom Watson were outside of the court delivering very powerful statements about what had taken place and claiming victory. And I do think that Prince Harry and Tom Watson can legitimately claim victory here. I do think there are lots of upsides for News UK as well, but they have managed to drag out of News Group newspapers this apology, an admission for the very first time that there was illegal activity commissioned by the Sun.
Yes, not by the journalists, but by the people.
I think that's a very important point, and would, I'm sure, have been very painstakingly finessed as part of these negotiations. There is some plausible deniability there for News UK and News Group newspapers. They can say that this activity was carried out at arm's length and may not have been known at the time. And I think the fact that we have this settlement means that we're probably never going to get to the bottom of some of these things.
So generally the reason why people settled and sort of up to this point, I was reading about this, so if there was an offer made, hey, let's stop, we'll give you £1 million. And then if you went through with the court case and then the judge or the courts decided you would only due £500,000, so you would due less than what was offered, you're on the hook for both sides' legal bills. Yeah. And this goes to such a large degree that everyone basically had to give in. Harry was always the view that he's sort of someone that could withhold that, but even he gave in at the end. Was it money?
I mean, we're told it's not money. The reporting yesterday was that there was an 8-figure settlement, so that would be over £10 million. Prince Harry has always talked about it being about accountability. So look, I'm sure money was a factor, but what he has managed, as I say, to drag out of News Group newspapers is unprecedented. And that's why he can legitimately claim some sort of victory. I thought the quote that Tom Watson gave in his statement yesterday was that he once thought that these tabloid newspapers had no predators, but he was wrong. Their predator was Prince Harry.
Interesting. I mean, Will, in that apology, there was also an apology for basically how the newspapers had acted over a large proportion of Harry's life, and particularly the life of his mother. I mean, there's always a tension between tabloids and celebrities. They sell newspapers or generate clicks now. Is that less of a case now, or is it just it's always been the same? It continues to be the same.
I think it does continue. I think social media has changed that quite significantly. I think where with newspapers there used to be the view, because they were the main outlet that provided the scrutiny when people were also enjoying their private time in their private lives. And there was a way of managing that and just keep yourself out of trouble. But I think social media has changed that. And I think even, if you're an actor starting your career now, you come into it with an understanding that you will be scrutinised. And you can use that to your advantage. But I think people are much more aware of kind of media managing themselves. It's been fascinating really seeing this play out, and obviously Hacked Off were really kind of trumpeting from their point of view as well. This is a victory and a vindication, and I defer to Jake, and I'm fascinated by the view from journalists and people within newspapers, because I think there is a real danger. Look, in this world, we need a really vibrant media and newspapers and online outlets that can hold power to account, and it's important to draw the distinction. And I think we would agree that practices now are far better than they were 15 years ago, even probably 5 years ago. But it's I think they equally, the truth is the Sun said they hadn't done something for years that they have now admitted, with caveats of it being kind of outside freelancers or whatever, that it did happen. And again, that does reflect poorly then on the very fine journalists doing an incredible job. And I think that's where there'll be a lot of anger within the industry. Although I did get off the train at London Bridge, and the big shiny News UK building is still standing. Yes. So I'm sure they'll be determined now to kind of get on the front foot and put it behind them.
I mean, the view is that they've maybe spent around £1 billion on all of this, haven't they? News.
Well, David Sherborne said that in his statement yesterday, and I assume that those statements were, if not agreed between all parties, then at the very least they were given fair warning to each other about what they were going to say outside of court, and that figure has not been contested.
Also, it didn't stop the Sun on the day apologised publishing news stories about Prince Harry.
Well, it didn't publish anything about... I checked this morning. Okay. There's not a single story on the Sun website about this settlement, which is kind of extraordinary. I mean, there may well have been something in the newspaper. Yeah. I haven't read the newspaper.
I thought they would have sort of said that there had to be something on the front page, a little column on the left-hand side or something.
Well, you would like them to, because you would like them to own it and go, look, we're saying we are a different organisation. This wouldn't happen today. So own it. And make a point of going, we've drawn a line under it, we've admitted that something that shouldn't have happened, now let's go forward. Or don't write about it, make it a complete elephant in the room, and the risk being that, again, it calls into question the credibility of a prominent voice within the media that also, we do need newspaper outlets to be doing a fine job, or else we're all stuffed.
The Times did report on it. I think that's important to note.
In the same News UK staple.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you think it will change how the tabloids report on Prince Harry?
I don't think it will change much about the way that they report on Prince Harry. I think
they just created a brand that is anti-Harry so much they can't kind of get out of it. They've told all their readers that he's a dreadful person, and they've got to just keep running with that.
I think if you surveyed Sun readers, I don't think they need to be told that he's an awful person. I think a lot of people hold that belief. Yeah. The thing that I find really interesting is whether, as a result of this settlement, the Sun might have less access to... I mean, they probably don't have a lot of access to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but I wonder whether it might have broader ramifications for their access to the royal family. You can't help but think about how King Charles may have been responding to some of this yesterday, whether he was proud of his son for what he had achieved, to extract this also recognition that Princess Diana was mistreated and her privacy was trampled upon as well, I think was significant. And
I mean, the royal family have been part of this game, and the sort of warring households have been leaking. They enabled quite a lot of this reporting as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not privy to exactly what was being leaked to whom, but there's no doubt that the royal family use the press to their advantage when it suits them.
What?
But it's got to make them think a little bit about what they do next as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, not privy. I know nothing about the inner workings of the royal family and their kind of media setup, but I guess they can play it in a few ways. They can kind of go, well, it's not us doing this, and kind of curry favour. Or it probably, I'm sure along the way, I mean, I think there was a quote somewhere, I hope this is true, that King Charles had said it's committing suicide, actually, seeing this through. And I can't imagine it has gone down well in the kind of the royal institutions, but also, aren't we just all a little bit bored by the Prince Harry, Meghan? Can we kind of have a little bit of respite now? Maybe we can all agree a bit of an amnesty and go, look,
it's not going to happen because she's got this Netflix series coming up in which the tabloid newspapers are absolutely going to feast upon it.
Are people going to watch?
It will be all over the front pages.
Well, that's the reality. And to the question, I guess that's the point, is, yes, I'm sure there's been people kind of really stoking an anti-sentiment because it helped their everything else going on, but it obviously, people are clicking on the articles. People must be reading about this stuff.
Also, haven't we got another case still to come with the Daily Mail group?
Yeah, I mean, I said it was the series finale, but it's not.
That's end of a season.
Yeah. He's got an outstanding case against Associated Newspapers, which is the publisher of the Daily Mail. He's brought that case in conjunction with other major celebrities, including Sir Elton John and Liz Hurley. Baroness Lawrence as well is also part of that. That's due to go to court in January next year. It remains to be seen whether we might see another settlement. And of course, yesterday they were asking lots of questions about whether the authorities should be carrying out a broader investigation. It doesn't feel like there's the appetite for that.
There's not the appetite from the government. I mean, there's even a view that did it affect some of the things they said at Leveson? As well, that maybe the story has slightly changed because of
I think that'll be interesting to see, because I think the Leveson 2 has completely died down, and it will be interesting to see whether I'm sure, again, if there were members of Hacked Off here, they'd go, right, this is the moment to really see that through. I think the government have gone off that idea.
I don't see Keir Starmer putting that at the top of his list of things to do.
No. I'm sure he's got plenty of other quite serious
Well, they've
things.
already briefed against it, haven't they?
Right.
They did on within hours of the settlement. I as of now, I've not seen a statement from the Metropolitan Police as to whether they might look further into this. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that News UK faces further investigation.
I think, as a broader point, I think, again, we were talking about the fact that it calls into question the credentials of the media, of the newspaper industry, media, news, and all of that, and that is hugely damaging and really regrettable, I think, because you can see the pattern of them people being driven to social media and platforms where they will just completely get fake news, but it pours fuel on the fire of people that stand up, whether they're presidents or leaders of business, going, fake news, mainstream news, look what they did there. And I think none of us, whatever kind of political views you have, whatever kind of wherever you get your news, none of us benefit from that.
Well, speaking of the social media platforms, it's been a tumultuous week for TikTok, shutting down its app in the States for under 24 hours, only to switch it back on with Trump's inauguration. I think it now works if you've got it, but you can't, in America, download it from Apple or from Google. But the story's far from over, as US interests eye up a purchase if they get Trump's blessing. Jake, Elon Musk's inevitably in the running for this.
Absolutely zero monopoly concerns there, is there?
But there's also another person who put their hand up, Mr. Beast. He's keen to join the fray as well. He's joined one of the bidders.
Should we all club together? Is there a chance? I don't know.
Yeah, fun platform to own.
Yes, sure on my vast deadline salary, I'm sure I can afford TikTok. I mean, Jimmy Donaldson, I mean, it looked like a bit of a stunt initially, but
he's some good stunt casting to add to a thing.
And he genuinely follows through on his stunts. I mean, he's a man who delivers and delivers on big scale. So it feels like there's some truth in it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this all sort of quietly goes away and Donald Trump finds a way to make sure TikTok is just, it doesn't even need to be purchased by an American buyer and survives as it is.
There's an interesting battle between the law that was passed before he took over by a lot of Republicans as well.
Oh, it's completely bilateral, isn't it?
And what Trump wants to do. There has to be in place a deal to allow sort of TikTok back on the air. And it's a big gamble so Oracle and Alamy, one of the CDN providers, have sort of allowed it to be turned back on. They could be fined £5,000 a user, which could add up to billions. So there's a lot of gambles everyone's taking over what happens with TikTok.
Yeah, it's all a bit murky though, isn't it? Because Donald Trump even suggested that Larry Ellison, who owns and founded Oracle, could be a buyer. It's all a bit murky. I think there's no doubt that Donald Trump holds a lot of cards here, and he will be seen as a sort of savior by TikTok users, which is no bad place for a incoming US president. And I sort of wonder whether, the fact that the TikTok CEO was at the inauguration, Shou Chew, suggests that, I'm sure there's all sorts of conversations going on behind the scenes. Maybe even Trump is trying to bring TikTok to heel like he has done with American tech giants. Maybe he's even telling them to sort of juice the Trump algorithm, turn up the Trump dial, and they'll be just fine in America. I don't know. This is all speculation on my part. But
Will, I mean, Trump talked about giving a permit, which I thought was a very kind of Trumpian way of dealing with it. Hey, they can just buy a permit from us, me, whatever, to allow the app back. I mean, they very much leaned into. There was a little notification saying that due to a conversation with President Trump, TikTok's back open. I mean, they're kissing ass like the rest of the tech.
Well, yeah, and I think Trump had suggested that a buyer could buy 50% and the other 50% would be owned by the government. And you get into this world of going, so we're kind of criticising the fact that we think China owns or kind of what they're called,
ByteDance.
Yeah. But then we're also saying let's get other governments involved in policing potential free speech if it exists. So I think it should be waved through if we all agree that we have to just call him Mr. Beast. So that at the next inauguration we have it will be like a WWE assembling of characters from all these billionaires that just own these platforms and have far more influence than anyone ever has.
Well, there were no red-hatted Trump supporters, and the tech bros were in front of the cabinet when they were sitting there for the inauguration.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any description of what the Trump administration's like, surely that's got to be it.
Yeah, quite. And look, the world has always had very, very wealthy individuals who basically dictate how things work. I guess the difference being there is a lack of regulation in terms of the rise of these companies. Often they have a kind of global power that even Rupert Murdoch would envy. And we have no understanding of how data and all the information they gather, the values being put, $1 trillion valuation on TikTok suggests, and that isn't just because there's lots of people posting very funny videos on that. That's because data is incredibly useful. And again, not just to get you to go to your local supermarket and buy something, because it helps steer the geopolitics of how the world works. So it is scary. It's hard to be too scared by someone called Mr. Beast, but I mean, we should all probably be very scared.
I mean, is TikTok, when you think about your clients, is it just become the essential platform? Do you have to basically play?
No, you don't. No, not at all. I don't think you do. I think I think for production companies, and I think for, we've got a team that do live tours, it's incredibly useful. And I think where it proved incredibly valuable to our clients was particularly to comedians during lockdowns and things like that, because they found that was where they could, lots of the comedy talent that we see doing really exciting things have developed that voice of theirs on these platforms. But you can still, I mean, that is the reality. Is also the one safety valve, I guess, that we all have is we could just stop using these platforms. If we all stopped using X, it does diminish the value, and likewise with TikTok. But it does feel like that horse has bolted quite far ahead.
I think it's interesting on the X side. I've always been a sort of Twitter user. There are significantly less tweets from the people that I follow. Like, it's sort of becoming a ghost town. And Elon Musk's heart/Nazi salute this week, I don't think particularly encourages
Do we need
people,
the the slash? I mean, it's yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it's something even just with mates you discuss. Come off X, because otherwise you just you're validating it or whatever. But then I'm always of the belief that you can persuade people, or you can remain a voice of not that God says the guy with no influence on there whatsoever. But I mean in the sense that don't let things become echo chambers, but then you're working against an algorithm that looks pretty well designed to stoke anger or frustration.
Social media is driven by emotion. We had a TikTok viral hit from the Media Club last week, so our chat about Scotland and the traitors did like 70,000 views on TikTok, and it did like 150,000 views on...
Oh my God, I'm really...
Is this the obscure nations and regions story about the traitors?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm suddenly nervous, by the way, so watch what we say.
But what's interesting is the reason that I think it got a lot of uptake is it drove passion. People in Scotland, even who were not in the media, regarded that, you read the comments, regarded it as that's typical for what happens here in Scotland. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily understand the broader story, and you can't always do that in a minute-long clip. But you can already see how these things get skewed. I thought it was interesting this week that Trump's return is having such an impact on US media. On Wednesday, his FCC new sort of chair reinstigated an investigation about bias at CNN, ABC, and MSNBC. I mean, they're really going. Him and his team are really going to go for the media, aren't they?
They have already, and they're pursuing lawsuits, and they're making these intimidation threats, and they're doing it, and it's working. We've seen evidence of these big media companies now taking steps in his direction, settling lawsuits, making donations to the Trump Museum in the case of ABC and Disney.
What are things to look forward to?
I just think we're going to see more of this going forward, and I mean, it's troubling. It really is troubling.
I think the BBC said, I think one of the reporters said it's not going to affect their coverage, but the resources to cover the sheer volume of Trump activity, that's actually quite complex to hold them to account.
Well, I think one of the really interesting things this week, and I mean, this has sort of taken root in a lot of the commentary around the inauguration and the executive orders that he has issued since taking power again, is that there's almost this sort of apathy, there's almost a sort of resignation that Trump has now accumulated all this power and is able to exercise that power in a way that we've not really seen in American democracy before. And the media, the news networks in particular, are not holding him to account in the same way because it's become normalised.
Thanks both. More to come, including what's been happening with Noel Fielding after this.
Hello Media Club listeners, Patrick here from Podcast Discovery, the podcast marketing company, where this week we've been reflecting on how to build your show. Should you go all in on a big launch or save your resources for waves of marketing? Is launching straight into the top 10 a must for a successful show? And if you're not aiming to make one big splash, how do you know if you're being successful? To speak to us about that and what we can do for your podcast marketing, head to podcastdiscovery.com. That's podcastdiscovery.com.
Where do you listen to your podcasts? Maybe on the commute, in the car, or you might be watching me on your screen now. Hello. Here's a surprising fact. More people than ever are watching podcasts on YouTube. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast or already have one, adding a video element could open up a whole new audience. That's where Podshop comes in. With expert engineers, a purpose-built recording studio, and top-tier equipment, Podshop makes it easy to create high-quality video content that helps your podcast reach a wider audience. So whether you're new to podcasting or a seasoned pro, Podshop Studios is the perfect setting for your video podcast. And for a limited time, enjoy 25% off your first booking at Podshop Studios with the Code Media Club. Don't miss out. Visit podshoponline.co.uk today and take your podcast to the next level. Welcome back. So what else has been happening in the media industry this week? I'm glad you asked. Well, Prime Video is moving more of its TV budget to the UK. That's according to Amazon UK boss Chris Bird, who's speaking at an RTS event on Wednesday. But he said that shows like Mr. Bates versus the Post Office won't be on the cards, saying it was too British to be on the streamer. Clarkson's Farm, anyone? Publisher DC Thomson is planning to cut 35 jobs and close 4 magazines as part of a cost-saving strategy that's netted pre-tax profits of £93.8 million across its business. The titles to be discontinued are This England, 110% Gaming, Unicorn Universe, and My Weekly Pocket Novels. And the BBC's new exec for generative AI has been outlining the guiding principles for using AI in BBC content. Rachel Jupp stressed the need for transparency with consumers about where it's being deployed. Jake and Will are still here with me. AI, we kind of come back to it and we sort of sometimes go around in circles a bit. What's it going to mean for us, etc., etc. I'm interesting. The BBC have kind of come out with some policies. Everything seemed relatively straightforward, didn't they, Jake?
I think what they've set out is really sensible. Essentially, there's sort of 3 principles at the heart of this. There's acting in the best interests of the public, prioritising talent and creatives, and being open and transparent about where AI technology is being used with audiences. And those all make a lot of sense. I think the BBC has a real responsibility to be a leader in this conversation, hold audiences' hands through some of this debate. And you're right, I think a lot of it can be quite amorphous, but as soon as it gets specific, people have very strong feelings. So something like the Michael Parkinson podcast, in which he's been revived in AI form, or more, in the last few days, I don't know if you've seen these stories about AI being used to sort of tune up the accents, the Hungarian accents on The Brutalist, this big Oscar bait movie. And it has really exercised people in the industry.
So to make it more, I haven't seen the story, so to make it more Hungarian sounding.
Yes, exactly.
So you take my voice, give me a better accent.
The Hungarian language dialogue has been tuned up using AI to make it sound more authentic.
Interesting. I thought the other interesting thing from this was basically nothing in news. So if you're the BBC, nothing AI in news. If you want to do something, you need to ask first. And that's kind of sensible, isn't it? Keep it out of that part.
Yes. I mean, the BBC's, as I said, the BBC's got to be leading this responsibly, and I think the most important one, I think, of those 3 principles is transparency and being really clear with audiences where this is happening, how it's happening, and why it is happening. And I think that will get us some way to adopting AI responsibly, both in the interests of the industry and for those who are consuming these services.
Will, do you think talent would like a bit of an AI tune-up to make them seem better than they maybe are at something? Is it just it's like makeup?
No, I'm intrigued as to how kind of actors feel about having their performance tuned up, because I think actors pride themselves on delivering their own performance, and I guess it would be similar to singers that have their voices tuned in an editing suite once they've done
that is the comparison they've made.
Is it right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
like auto tuning, but I mean, look, they're very keen to stress that Adrian Brody is his performance, and it's very authentic to him and what he did on camera. Yeah,
but I think that to the points that Jake made at the start, I think we'd all love something that could come along and make us all look great. But I think there are genuine fears that AI is not quite there yet, and also I think and this is a really complex discussion, but I think authenticity and our own quirks and humanness have a value. People like that, and within the BBC's guidelines, I think the stuff about subtitling and translating, again, if it's done accurately, I think that makes sense. So
they're looking to just sort of like, if they did some transcription and then some automated subtitling. You've just got to say, hey, we've been assisted by this.
Exactly, yeah. And things like that where it's an administrative support, I think that all makes sense. But I think we're still really far off, again, leaning on Jake's examples of where it goes wrong before. I mean, if my team started telling me that they were using AI to issue press releases, I'd be incredibly nervous. So
would I.
Yeah.
But it's interesting about authenticity. Do you think we'll get to a point where actually not including AI will be a sort of stamp of honor, like, hey, this publication or this program is AI free?
Possibly. I mean, a bit like additive-free food or something. Perhaps.
Organic. This is organic.
This is all organic. I mean, I think people at home only care if it starts infringing on quality and accuracy, particularly within news and things. But maybe so. I mean, I think what, again, the fears and the real genuine fears are when people start losing jobs. And I think, again, me flippantly saying subtitling sounds good, I'm sure there's brilliant subtitlers out there going, great, I'm now out of work. So but equally, the world does evolve and we all have to kind of find ways to adapt to it.
Now, we talked earlier on about the difficulty in getting second series commissioned, particularly in comedy, and by a streamer, often even harder. But Big Talk's production of the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turpin has imploded after its star didn't return after the Christmas break. Jake, this is an Apple TV show with Noel Fielding. What's happened?
So, I mean, just to provide a bit of context, this is just so unusual. This, we were racking our brains in the office last week to think of a sort of comparable example, and we really genuinely couldn't. It's it's very, very rare that a prestige show like this explodes in this way, and I feel for everyone involved. I'm sure it's not been easy. We are being told that the series is dead. They won't be able to salvage anything for season 2, even though they'd filmed about 3/4 of the series. The reasons as to why it has gone this way, Noel Fielding's agent has said that there was a medical issue. We in the press know a bit more than what is being reported. We are bound by privacy law, and Noel Fielding does have a right to privacy, and this is private medical information, and therefore it is responsible that we don't report on these things. But we know that there's a medical issue. I think that there is little doubt that the accusation is that he went to France over Christmas and just didn't come back. There is a feeling, I think, at Big Talk and Apple that was not a particularly responsible thing to do, and it has put people out of work and put a creative endeavor in the mud. And as I say, I think it's a shame because this could have been a great returning franchise. It's got amazing comedy talent attached. We're told that the likes of Jason Isaacs and Dawn French were going to appear in the second season. We've sort of been robbed of those performances in what is quite a fun vehicle for British comedy talent. It's a real shame.
I will, whether you're ill or not, talent obviously they have this on their shoulders, don't they? They are sort of almost inadvertently responsible for the existence of these productions.
They are, but also they're human, and without, I don't know any of the background, and it sounds from what Jake's saying, there's quite a few sensitivities around this. So, it's leading a show and your name being above the door is a big responsibility and comes with a lot of pressure as well. And it's just quite a sorry story. You've got lots of crew members working, and it's been a really tough time for them. A huge production team, And it's a popular show, and people want, we're ready to watch it again. So I just hope there's some better outlook for it.
It is popular. I mean, we've been a bit surprised by the readership for some of the stories we've written about this. It shows that there's a real appetite for information about it. And my understanding is that Big Talk and Apple TV have done their best to make sure that crew have been looked after throughout this process, and trying to make the best of a bad situation.
I mean, the challenge is always without enough information, some people can go, oh, he's not really sick, or he's not sick enough, and obviously it's sort of impossible to balance. But obviously there's going to be a knock-on to his other work. We've got Bake Off coming back. Obviously discussions about crisis talks. There's always crisis talks. But big question for Channel 4 about whether they stick around with Noel or twist to someone else.
Yeah, I think there is definitely big question marks about Bake Off. Noel Fielding, spokesperson, has said that as far as they're concerned, Noel Fielding will be returning as the co-presenter of the next season, which begins shooting from April. But ultimately, it's not necessarily Noel Fielding's decision. If Channel 4 and Love Productions, which is the production company behind Bake Off, decide that they don't want to encounter similar issues, they may well decide to replace him as the presenter. Now, I'm not saying we've got to that point, and none of my conversations last week suggested that a decision was imminent, but I would be very surprised if those conversations weren't taking place right now.
Will, how essential is he to Bake Off? I mean, that format is so strong, and it's such a well-loved programme, and they've changed hosts before. Is it a huge deal if they find someone else?
I think I think Noel Fielding brings a lot to that show for such a kind of mainstream format. He brings that offbeatness to it, and I think he's very well loved. And as you say, I think having gone through a few lineup changes, I'm sure everybody will be very nervous of doing that again, because it's not easy, and again everybody's fighting so hard for an audience that to give viewers any excuse to move away from things or whatever is it is a huge risk. So I'm sure that everybody behind the scenes will be working very hard to try and make sure that doesn't happen.
It is presenter change proof, though. We've seen obviously Mel and Sue leave, and a whole roster of co-presenters for Noel Fielding come and go. So I'm sure you're right. I'm sure they would be reluctant to make a change, but they've shown that the format is the absolute central part of the success.
People sending in some video demo tapes, won't they? To love.
Yeah. Well, if you're an agent who would quite like to see your client on that show, then I'm sure you may well be making some suggestions.
Such is the horrible world of showbiz. It's not show friends, it's show business. Right, just enough time for the quiz. Let's see how much attention you've been paying to the media this week. This week it's entitled The Price is Perfect. A few media deals to discuss with you through the medium of a shiny floor quiz from the 1980s. I'll feed you a media story with a price attached. You tell me what the correct price is. Okay, closest wins. It's a best of three. Let's play The Price is Perfect. Right, question number one. Netflix added nearly 19 million subscribers in the last quarter of last year, and has said it's going to raise its prices in North America. But do you know what it currently costs for the ad-free full-fat subscription to Netflix in the UK? Current prices, Will.
Well, I should, because I do have it, but I'm going to say £20 a month.
Okay, Jake.
$6.99.
$6.99 for ads version. The standard HD package is $10.99 a month, and the premium cost is $17.99 a month if you want all the 4K
so I win.
experts. So will you get the point? Now, if you're paying 20 quid, I don't know what you're paying. You're paying
I don't know who else I'm paying or what else I'm paying.
Yeah, you win on a technicality.
Netflix last raised its UK prices in October 2023, and with the US rising theirs, I'm sure we'll see a UK increase.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Quite soon. Right, question number two. Journalist Barry Keevings received a bill from Alamy after posting a link to one of his own stories on Tumblr. but how much was it for? So this is a bill from Alamy, the photos company. Will?
I am going to say it was £800.
£800. Jake?
I think it was half that, 400.
You were closest, 460. The story first reported in Press Gazette goes on to say Keevins has successfully sued Alamy in the past for selling a photo that didn't belong to them. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to get the money for photos, aren't they? I mean, lots of emails to publications. I'm sure your bosses are quite keen that you don't find a picture on Google Images.
Yeah, this feels very opportunistic by Alamy, and yeah, I mean, it just doesn't. Something about this story doesn't feel right. And Keevins has said, I mean, one of the quotes in the Press Gazette story was very funny. It's like he said he was asking them if they are new to the internet, and are they going to go around everybody posting links to stories that contain Alamy pictures and ask them to cough up cash as well.
Did he pay the fine?
He's not going to pay the fine, no.
Okay, question number 3. We're one apiece now, so this is for the win. The planning application for Marlow Film Studios may be pushed through depending on the outcome of a public inquiry that started on Tuesday. But what's the budget of the proposed film and TV studio in pounds for Marlow Film Studios? Jake?
I genuinely have no idea.
Glad you're going
700 million.
Okay. Will? How much for TV studios?
TV studios. I mean, I would say I'm going to go with £1 billion.
It's all in the right area. £750 million.
Oh, it's pretty close, no?
Oh my God.
Very close.
You're involved in this bid. You can't afford to buy TikTok. I knew it.
The decision about whether it goes ahead rests with the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. Well, congratulations, Jake. You win. You get to investigate whether we should build our own studios for the media club.
And you'll pay for it, Jake.
Or do I get £700 million?
Can we get the government to pay for it? That's the big question. Thank you both. What's keeping you busy at the moment? What's coming up, Will, in your world?
I did say as I came in, when you asked me the last and only time I've previously been on, I suddenly got flustered because if my team was sat here, they're the ones that do all the hard work and would tell me. We're getting into it, in the full throes of award season. So we look after the BAFTA TV Awards, BAFTA Games, BAFTA TV Craft. So we'll see you a lot, Jake, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of things coming along. The team are very busy on a new Amazon show that will be on air, launching soon. Last One Laughing. My role is very much running the company and planning ahead, and we've got lots of things that we're looking to do in 2025, including internationally. So, and also taking stock on kind of where the industry's at. But very, very busy. I'm very busy.
That's
to all
good.
my team. I am very busy.
And Jake, what are you looking at the moment?
Oh, always on the lookout for mischief. So, if you've got any media stories, do get in touch. And yeah, award season is massive for Deadline. It's Oscar nominations as today, as we're recording, and BAFTAs next month, so lots to look forward to.
Lots to read about and see what's going on. Thank you both for joining us. Remember, head to themediaclub.com and register for our weekly email. It's also useful for us to find out who you are, so you just go to themediaclub.com. My name is Matt Deegan, the producer is Matt Hill. It's a Rethink audio production with video support from Podcast Discovery. And we'll see you next week.